Yeah.
That's my
And they
beach.
get worse. Yeah.
That's what happens on the beach of those
No,
two.
it's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you
Okay.
for joining me tonight.
Oh.
Imagine leaving your home, walking to the sidewalk, to the corner, and seeing it submerge under a foot of water. Imagine it being a struggle to find safe water to drink. Imagine your front yard flooded with water coming into your home, creeping under each door. Imagine South Florida's streets, parks, and innumerable places submerged with Atlantic Ocean waters. Climate change is real. It's not some hypothetical thing that crazy scientists are coming up with, and it's affecting South Florida with rising sea levels. South Florida is extremely at risk. After intensely researching the subject, in the next few minutes, I'll discuss how climate change is causing sea levels to rise in South Florida, how it's happening much faster than we anticipated, and some ways it's being addressed. So first, climate change is causing sea levels to rise in South Florida. CO2 and water vapor are the two gases that affect natural greenhouse warming. Humans, really since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, have increased CO2 levels, creating a warmer Earth. There are three reasons of sea level rise: thermal expansion, the water heating up, melting of continental ice sheets, and loss of ice mass in Greenland and Antarctica. Water expands with higher temperatures, so with increasing ocean temperatures, sea levels rise. With increasing CO2 levels, the water becomes warmer, creating expanding water, and as you can see, sea level has risen 8 to 9 inches in the last 100 years. The melting of ice sheets doesn't directly impact sea level rising, because that mass is already displacing the water, but when it melts, it allows it to absorb much more sunlight, creating to higher temperatures, creating to expanding water. Half of Miami has an elevation under 5 feet. So with a 3-foot rise, 1/3 of South Florida will be gone. With a 6-foot rise, it'd be an absolute devastation. With a 12-foot rise, according to Jeff Goodall from Rolling Stone magazine, who says, South Florida will be little more than an isolated archipelago surrounded by abandoned buildings and crumbling overpasses. According to Ben Strauss, in an article published in the Miami Herald in 2012, global warming has already doubled or tripled the odds of extreme high water events over widespread areas of the U.S. coast. This is happening way faster than it was initially anticipated. At the Sea Level Rise Summit in 2012, sponsored by the USGS, the United States Geological Survey, in 1920, the sea level rose 1 millimeter per year. In 1990, it went up to 2 millimeters per year, and now 3 millimeters per year, so it's steadily increasing. They noted 3 key issues at the summit. First, sea waters are rising through the drainage systems, creating floods in lower level suburban areas. Salt water is intruding our coastal drinking wells, and we have outdated drainage wells. They use gravity with water going through canals, higher level canals into lower level sea levels, but with rising sea levels, it just doesn't work. Ben Strauss says sea level rise is more than doubling the risk of storm surge at this level by 2030. As Bill McKibben says in his book Earth, like someone lost in the woods, we need to stop running, sit down, see what's in our pockets that might be of use, and start figuring out what steps to take. Here are some ways, 3 ways that they're addressing the sea level rises are protecting infrastructure through building levees and seawalls, accommodating by raising the buildings, and exploring natural ways to reduce the sea level rise. Robert Doust, an ecologist at Arcadis, a Dutch firm that specializes in engineering solutions to rising seas, says, conventional seawalls and barriers are not effective here. Protecting the city, if possible, will require innovative solutions. Unfortunately, in the state of Florida, there's a lot of government denial. Governor Rick Scott continues to attack Florida environmental protection agencies and slashes the budget of Florida Water Management District, which controls most of the drinking water in Florida. There is help with U.S. Senator Bill Nelson, who calls Florida ground zero for sea level rise. So without government help, other organizations in South Florida are taking the lead. Some are creating short-term backflow preventers, which is a short-term help. It helps with the less flooding on the streets, but it's very costly and requires a ton of maintenance. Other people are looking into natural barriers, such as mangrove forests, dunes, and oyster beds. Oyster beds in particular are interesting because they rise as sea level rises. In conclusion, we spoke about how climate change is causing sea levels to rise in South Florida, how it's happening way faster than we initially anticipated, and some interesting ways of how it's being addressed. To finish, I want to leave you with a quote from Harold Wainless, who is the chairman of the Department of Geological Sciences at the University of Miami. In 2013, he said, "Miami, as we know it today, is doomed. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when." Thank you. And if anybody has any questions?
Now, has the concern of sea level rise affected the real estate market in South Florida?
Well, that's part of the denial too. It hasn't. People are still buying, prices are still going up, they're still expanding infrastructure and buildings all in South Florida. So that goes with the denial part of the whole thing. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.